Hey guys, today's question is about anxious attachment, and that really is about a neediness in relationships. And I'm going to be talking about how to solve this today, and then also how it relates to escapism issues, because this can be a major trigger. This question comes from a longtime community member in the Frontline Man program, and he says, my question is around anxious attachment and going towards secure attachment. I'll define these terms in a second. How can I become truly secure in relationships? I want to feel secure in relationships and in myself. I become needy in relationships and I wish to break the habit. And I press him for a little follow-up and ask him kind of how it shows up for him. And he's like, it's kind of this thing that's always floating in the background of his mind, and it creates like this deep, intense emotional distress inside of him. What is this? What is anxious attachment? Well, and you might even realize that you're being needy or whatever, but usually people with this problem, they have trouble stopping themselves, even if they're self-aware. So here are some symptoms that go along with anxious attachment. One would be fear of abandonment, where you're always kind of worried that people are going to leave you or stop caring about you. Another one would be a need for reassurance, kind of like this constant need to be told that you're good, be validated, to constantly get affection or attention. Another one is overthinking and rumination, where you will constantly replay scenarios in your mind, or where you had a conversation with someone, were they, mad at you? Did you handle that right? Maybe you're always thinking about relationship dynamics, like what's going to happen. Every time you're about to send a text, you have to think about it for an hour. Maybe even stuff where you're thinking about the way that how you're holding your posture and your tone of voice. Is it good enough? That sort of thing. Another one is sensitivity to perceived slights. So maybe you're constantly worried about, did someone try and snub me? Are they mad at me? Are they is that technically ambiguous behavior they displayed a sign that, there's something wrong with me or that they're rejecting me? Another one would be clinginess and emotional reactivity, where you just kind of just always want to be on people, constantly hear from them. They always got to check in with you. If they don't text you back right away, you get upset. If they're not giving you the feedback or attention you want, then you just start getting irritated, annoyed, or maybe depressed and despondent, okay? Whether, there's a lot of guys out there who deal with this themselves, and even if you don't have it yourself, chances are someone has this issue. And so where does this anxious attachment come from? Well, typically, from what I understand, a lot of it's caused by, what you experience in childhood, where particularly you have an inconsistent caregiver where they're, sometimes they're loving and attentive, and then other times they pull back, other times they're despondent, other times they're maybe even, unpleasant towards you, they reject you, or maybe just busy, okay? And what ends up happening with a person in this situation, a child growing up in this, is that they learn that love is unpredictable, and it must be constantly monitored. They need to constantly monitoring themselves so they don't misstep, and constantly reading the other person so that they can understand what they're supposed to do in any given situation. Now, there are two big consequences of having anxious attachment issues, okay? And the first one, obviously, is that this will end up sabotaging your relationships. Even though that's the thing you're most concerned about, it causes big problems in them, because this constant anxiety about being rejected, it makes you clingy, it makes you easily upset, it can make you controlling or even manipulative of others so you can get what you want out of them. And sometimes it's just plain annoying, and the thing that you want the most, to have that good relationship and feel secure in it, you actually end up pushing people away from you. Now, the other big way that this messes with you, and this is what I know for sure has been an issue with the guy who asked this question, is that this underlying anxiety and discomfort, socially, relationally, it's a big burden. It hurts. You carry it around with you constantly. It comes up and it haunts you. And this becomes a huge driver of escapism. So, for example, in the case of the guy asking this question, I know that this has been something that's caused him to really come back to porn repeatedly, or sexting apps, or, pursuing dysfunctional relationships, bad girlfriends and things like that. I think that's a pretty common pattern, because I've seen this with other clients as well, where people who are prone to anxious attachment, they are much more likely to abuse things like dating apps, cam sites, OnlyFans, etc. Basically something where there's real human interaction there. And I think a big reason for this is that it gives them, this sense of virtual connection and affirmation, but it's one that they can control. They can control whether they're going to get affirmation or not, or at least they can reliably get it. If you pay a cam girl to pay attention to you, you feel in control, right? You're not worried about her rejecting you. If you're, engaging in sexting apps, for example, okay, you kind of have an idea yeah, I'm going to get something that I'm looking for here, all right? And really all this behavior is about is trying to create a situation where you can press a button and you can get that hit of affirmation that makes the anxiety go away. And sexual affirmation in general is something that is very potent, particularly for men, but women also fall into this too. The woman who's constantly needs to get likes on her Instagram posts. It's like if she's feeling down, she posts a picture of herself showing some cleavage because she knows it'll get a lot of likes or something along those lines, okay? So men and women are both, they can both be susceptible to this pattern of behavior. How do you solve this? Well, the goal is to go from anxious attachment to secure attachment, where you are secure in yourself and you don't need to do all this needy, controlling stuff to other people, right? And the best way to solve this is that you need to start consistently and unconditionally affirming and loving yourself to counter the inconsistent or conditional love you were shown growing up. Basically, you have to reverse the wound that was created when you were young. So whatever that was, okay, it's created this sense of neediness on the emotional level. You've got to give yourself the love that wasn't shown to you. And it's not to say that everybody who has anxious attachment wasn't loved as a kid. In many cases, people were loved tremendously. It's just that their little child mind interpreted neglect. It's just that their, young mind interpreted neglect or rejection, and that's what made them feel, unsafe. So now what I want to do is offer you 3 big principles that you can use to start really building up this, truly self-affirmative attitude that can heal this wound of anxious attachment so that, 1, you can show up better in your relationships, and 2, you can, stop feeling like you need to use porn or some other kind of dysfunctional coping mechanism to treat that unhappiness inside of you. So point number 1 is all about how you interact with yourself. Okay, because what you got to do is you have to start talking to yourself. Your own internal narrative has to be one of a genuine and loving friend. Okay, you don't want to be talking to yourself as some kind of disappointing loser. All right, you want to show up as someone you care about. And so I know a big sticking point, particularly for the guy who asked this question, is that he tends to be a bit of a dick to himself in his head. And this is a pretty common pattern. This is, common for guys across the board, is that guys are very hard on themselves. They're very critical of themselves. And when they do that, they just stoke their own internal anxiety and they basically push themselves away. And that's when you're not feeling good about yourself, it makes sense that you're going to want to then latch on to other people to get them to affirm you. Because that little part of you that's feeling rejected by you, it's like, well, if someone else likes me, then I'm okay. So if you're constantly shitting on yourself, of course you're going to just feel bad and you're going to look for other people to try and pick you up. And if you can't figure out how to do that, well, then you're going to press that little escape button, use some porn, chat apps, whatever, to try and get that affirmation in another way. So now on to tip number 2, okay? I want you to focus on cultivating charitable goodwill rather than grasping, okay? So the anxiously attached person, they are like an emotional black hole, okay? They're just they don't feel good enough. They feel this pit of inadequacy inside of themselves. And they're constantly trying to leech affirmation from others around them. And this primarily comes from a place of being disconnected from any sense of dignity, like any sense of unconditional worth, feeling inadequate. And, they're just trying to fill that hole. But instead of being a vacuum like this, you want to develop the habit of showing up as the opposite, all right? Instead of being a black hole, you want to be a bright light. Okay, and that bright light, really what that is a radiant sense of goodwill that shines outward rather than grasps and pulls inward. And so the rational side of this is about conceptualizing and willing the good for others and yourself. Basically, you got to think, well, what would be good for them? What's the good I want for them? What's the good I want for me? Conceptualize that goodness. That's like the logical component, but it can't just be a rational operation, okay? It's got to go deeper than that because this problem, it exists on this limbic emotional level. This is where it's all about cultivating what I would call a warmness of heart. All right. The anxiously attached person will often feel like this painful ache, of lack in the center of their chest and their emotional core when they're triggered. And when you're feeling that, what you need to do is you need to start mentally connecting with that part that's hurting. Okay. Find that black hole and start shining light into it. Okay. Turn that heart on. Okay. And give that aching part love and goodwill. One way to kind of think about this is activating like an internal smile. That's like a Buddhist technique, which I love. Or even just thinking of it as an inner hug to yourself. All right. Because you got to start inside with you and your core. So you start by giving yourself this goodwill. You start by giving yourself this warmness of heart. But then once you have that going inside of you, you can start expanding it. All right. Like once we've primed this pump, we want to start radiating that warmness of heart and goodwill to others. All right. And this is just an attitude of giving, not from an emotionally manipulative place where you're only trying to get, and not from an attitude of the martyr who overextends themselves in an undignified or self-destructive manner, but from a place of genuinely seeking the greatest good. Like the anxiously attached person, they're like in this win-lose scenario. It's either like you give me what I want. It's either I win, you give me what I want, or I lose, okay? And so you don't give me what I want. And usually when they're thinking about this, the things that they want to get, they don't care if the other person loses. They're just in a win-lose kind of mentality. I win, I don't care if you win or not. If you lose, that's fine too. I just want me to feel good, okay? But when we're cultivating true goodwill, we're trying to aim for a win-win, all right? So it's like, what's the good I want for me? What's the good I want for you? Where can this intersect? Let's try and move toward that. That is legit, aligned, radiant goodwill. And if you start thinking in this win-win paradigm with this, your heart turned on, then like that's going to start changing everything. It's going to change the way you feel. It's going to change the way you think. It's going to change the way you act. And for our final point, I want you to focus on reconditioning your compulsive reflex to fall into this anxious and needy state. And the best way that I know to do this is kind of twofold. One, you have to have a plan where you're aiming to create a life you don't want to escape from. Basically like honoring that, hey, you're good. I want to live a good life. Okay. That's like a dignity thing. But then the practical mechanism is that you're doing like a daily bit of journaling to ensure that you're thinking these thoughts, you're pre-programming your mind to operate from this authentic place. And the journaling technique I recommend above all others for this is my Metascript method. There's probably other ways to do it, but this is what I found to be the best because it gives you a very concrete way to target points of anxiety and pre-program your mind to show up in a new and healthy way by thinking better thoughts, taking better actions. And this preconditioning idea, this idea of being able to put in the reps is really important because most anxiously attached people have a lifetime of acting on this anxiously attached pattern. And the reality is it's going to take some reps to recondition this response in life. And so if you want to learn the Metascript method so you can start addressing your anxious attachment and any dysfunctional coping mechanisms triggered by this issue such as porn use, scrolling, junk food, substances even, okay, then what I want you to do is click below to get my free training on this journaling technique now. And if you've got any other kind of question that you would like me to answer in a video like this, then all you got to do is send that question to podcast@frontlineman.com. And, if I think it'd be a good fit, I'll definitely make a video on it. But otherwise, let me know what you think in the comments below, subscribe, and get that journaling guide by clicking the link below. Thanks for watching. Ooh yeah. See you in the next one.